This money has taken over campaign finance, eroding our political process on both sides of the aisle, and is set to break records in this year's presidential election. And it comes with a fun name that I'm told isn't racist. Dark money.
Dark money.
Dark money.
Dark money groups.
Dark money is flowing.
Dark money. There's much too much money that flows in the shadows to influence our elections.
Good point, Talking Foreskin. Admittedly, folks, when I step into the political ring, it's normally in my capacity as treasurer of the National Chillers Party for the proliferation of pontoon kickbacks. But with the presidential race concluding in just a few days, I figure what better time for me to plow my snout into the steaming pile of feces and cash that's become our mainstream electoral system. Cause I'm a little pretend journalist piggy, and I'm about to squeal. Dark money means money from unknown sources that is used to back political candidates and causes. But to understand dark money, one must first go back to 2010, when Waka Waka topped the charts and a conservative nonprofit called Citizens United wanted to air some kind of anti-Hillary Clinton movie called Hillary the Movie. Citizens United was going to be banned from airing the film because of a law that prevented corporations from participating in campaign messaging right before an election. Citizens United sued, and soon the case was at the Supreme Court, which ruled that while Citizens United is an organization, they're also a group of individuals, therefore preventing them from—
Wait, what?
Corporations and unions from using their general funds to make independent expenditures for speech defined as electioneering communication.
From participating in campaign messaging right before an election. Citizens United sued, and soon the case was at the Supreme Court, which ruled that while Citizens United is an organization, they're also a group of individuals. Therefore, preventing them from airing their film, that's actually a violation of their First Amendment rights. The same would go for other types of organizations like corporations. Ain't that right, Craig Holman from the think tank Public Citizen?
So the Supreme Court, on its own initiative, turned this small case into a major case where they ended up ruling that corporations shall be treated as people and they can make unlimited independent expenditures in campaigns.
They can make unlimited independent expenditures in campaigns. Corporations can't directly give money to campaigns. That's considered bribery. And Citizens United didn't change that. What the Citizens United ruling allowed for is for corporations to give money to outside political entities. Entities that push certain messaging that might align with a certain candidate, but don't technically campaign for that candidate.
The groups that really stick out in terms of outside spending and dark money in particular are super PACs and 501c4 nonprofits.
That's Anna Masolia from the campaign finance watchdog Open Secrets. Of the two groups she's talking about, you've probably heard of super PACs. They run those ads that feel like a cross between a student film, World War II propaganda, and the dialogue parts of pornography.
Kamala Harris supported defunding our police. As a mom and grandma, that's terrifying to me.
Trump says Harris is a radical. I don't buy it.
If Donald Trump weirds you the out, then do something about it.
Democrats are dialed in on one thing: banning our nicotine pouches.
Because again, they technically don't work with campaigns. Super PACs can take an unlimited amount of contributions from basically anyone or any organization. And while super PACs have to disclose their donors to the Federal Election Commission, which is the regulatory agency in charge of enforcing campaign finance law, some of the groups super PACs take money from don't have to disclose their donors, including 501c4 nonprofits, that second group Anna mentioned earlier. 501c4s are one of those groups that don't have to disclose who gives them money because they're technically supposed to spend most of their cash on, quote, social welfare, not politics. But despite their legal missions to drum up money for their respective causes, there are a bunch of ways for them to impact political elections.
For example, they may spend on what are called issue ads, where they feature a candidate in the ad and they want to educate people on how amazing this candidate is on a particular issue, or how terrible this candidate is on a particular issue. And because they avoid words like vote for or vote against or the equivalent, anything that would expressly advocate for the candidate, they not only don't have to disclose their donors to the Federal Election Commission, in many cases, they don't have to disclose their spending either.
Which means that if a 501c4 pays for an ad that says,
Dan Toomey will nuke England so they finally know who's boss. Vote Toomey for president.
that counts as political, meaning against the rules. But if a 501c4 paid for an ad that said,
Dan Toomey will nuke England so they finally know who's boss.
I earned my degree at DeVry, and I have successfully...
And then just end it off there, and that's fine. So, like, if you get someone else to do an endorsement and say something...
Pretty cool, right?
that
Yeah.
doesn't count as political campaigning.
Just
It
don't
counts
tell 'em
as
to vote.
social welfare messaging. So you wouldn't have to let
Or
anyone
don't
know
tell 'em
which
to
Winkle
vote for political
Voss twin financed it. And while 501c4s can't explicitly ask the super PACs they donate to make a certain ad, they often work pretty close together.
There's very little stopping someone from giving money to a 501c4 that may be affiliated even with a super PAC. So you can have a super PAC where the same people who run the super PAC create a 501c4 nonprofit. It can be run by the same people out of the same office, using some of the same resources.
So if I were a billionaire who didn't want certain people knowing that I supported a particular presidential candidate, I could find a 501c4, give them a bucket full of money, which they would then give to a super PAC to fund a Facebook ad that destroys my grandpa's brain, and no one would ever know. Totally straightforward.
Literally within the first year of 2010 of the Citizens United decision, we saw outside spending by outside groups, nonprofit groups, corporations, and what eventually became super PACs increase 427.
I don't know if anyone else notices this either. Like, these older people, they're almost, maybe it's just me. I don't want to say that they're radicalized, but they're definitely listening to some radicalized messaging. You know, they're listening to that. And I don't think older people necessarily know how to use the internet to gain information and to look for a lot of information. Most of them download these apps and stay on the apps and don't actually look at, like, okay, well, it says he's gonna do this. Is he gonna do this? They don't look at that. They take that in as information, like if they were reading a news article. Like in a news article, it usually tells you what's happening and how it's happening, and those journalists want to have some sort of credibility, so they don't want to get everything wrong in it. So they would tell, you know, some amount of truth, right? If you were reading like a local news article, for instance, they would tell some amount of truth, and they would have to, because then if they didn't, then the local people, the locals in the town, they would be like, hey, what the fuck is this newspaper? And there'd be like outrage or something, you know, and that person would probably get fired, right? Probably. But online, it's almost like this anonymity approach and this thing where, like, you don't even have to tell the truth, and there's no reason for you to tell the truth, even, because the only thing it does garner you is like some sort of respect, you know. And who cares? What the fuck is even that? What is that? So yeah,
7%, literally overnight, and it's just gotten much, much worse ever since then.
No diggity. Let's crunch the numbers, Craig. By the 2010 midterm elections, right after super PACs were made legal by Citizens United, there were about 80 of them up and running. Today, there are over 2,000. In the 2012 presidential election, super PACs spent over $600 million. In the 2020 election, they spent over $2 billion. Damn, and we don't know where a good chunk of this money came from. Super PACs lean into this secrecy by naming themselves generically patriotic things like Concerned Americans for Freedom and Opportunity, Freedom Works for America, People Who Love America, or the I Love America Super PAC. And look, I can understand wanting to make an anonymous political donation. If my neighbors knew how many times I cut a check for RFK,
what does super PAC mean, though?
I'm sure they would stop inviting me to happy hour Topgolf. They're animal lovers. But it's not mom and pops dropping spare cash into these things.
Political committees that may raise unlimited money and spend unlimited sums to advocate for or against a candidate. Okay, a 501c4, which is a super PAC, I guess, a type of nonprofit tax-exempt group that can engage in political activity, often called social welfare organization, because political activities can't be their main purpose. Oh, never mind. Type of nonprofit. Because political activities can't be their main purpose. But this happens, and that's a super PAC, and it's 501c4. They're kind of like, that's together, right? It's like the same thing. It's limited money spent some stuff.
Things. The majority of super PAC funding comes from folks who got real cash to flash.
Super PACs are funded by just a handful of very wealthy special interests. They're throwing billions of dollars into the election just from a small handful of donors.
Indeed, in just this year's presidential election cycle, 96% of the money given to super PACs by individual people comes from the top 1% of donors. These roughly 6,000 people have contributed over $1 billion. And that's on top of another roughly $1 billion that super PACs have received from just 100 wealthy groups. And while I'm just focusing on super PACs in this video, you should know that there are a bunch of other groups with nuanced differences, from super PACs and 501c4s, through which wealthy individuals and corporations can donate money to impact elections. You can only put so much in a YouTube video, you know what I'm saying? So to recap, we have these shadowy organizations that can take unlimited donations and essentially have become vessels for wealthy people to drop their cash and crank out ads trying to sway American voters. Groovy. But despite all of this shadiness, at least we have that one golden rule that super PACs cannot directly coordinate with political campaigns, right?
Right.
Right?
The issue of coordination between candidates and super PACs comes down to a really important legal question of public communications.
Sean Cooksey is the chair of the Federal Election Commission, the regulatory agency for enforcing campaign finance law that I mentioned earlier.
Public communications is a term in the law that says these are the kinds of communications that cannot be coordinated between a candidate and an independent group without it being a prohibited contribution. That term includes broadcasts, TV, radio, newspaper ads, billboards, and other things that we consider public political advertising.
But Sean's colleague, FEC Vice Chair Ellen Weintraub, points out that
the coordination regulations are just riddled with loopholes at this point. And part of the problem is they were written before super PACs existed. And I have on numerous occasions proposed to my colleagues that we really need to update these regulations.
Yikes. Sounds like Ellen and Sean have some stuff that they need to sort out by the water cooler. Many of the loopholes through which super PACs and political parties coordinate are almost too stupid to be true. I mean, this is Dan Toomey level dumb shit. Like, sometimes super PACs will just hire former campaign staffers or have candidates attend events that they host. Other times, campaigns will upload B-roll online for super PACs to then use in ads. Campaigns will even put their talking points on their website in a big red box as a way to signal to super PACs that this is the language they want in their ads.
And because it's public, this is something that is currently legal in many cases. They're giving them all of the different ingredients for an ad, and they just have to put it together based on their instructions.
So if you're scrolling Instagram at 2 a.m. and you happen to see a political ad that looks like it was created by a campaign, it actually could very well have been funded by an anonymous billionaire, written by a former political staffer now working for a super PAC, which is operating outside of the disclosure rules campaigns have to follow, yet the ad was still created using footage and language provided by the campaign itself. And legally, that doesn't count as coordination between super PACs and campaigns. Now, originally, most dark money went to Republicans, since it came from corporations that tended to support a more conservative economic policy. But since 2018, Democrats have decided to fight fire with fire, going band for band and finding their own corporate daddies, launching a blitzkrieg of dark money that has overtaken Republicans in some cases.
Dark money is a bipartisan disease right now. Some billionaires are liberal, some billionaires are conservative. Everyone is a beneficiary of dark money, except the American voters, of course.
Which brings us to today, where a record amount of undisclosed cash is set to prop up two candidates who themselves campaigned against dark money to advance their own political careers.
They have the
It shouldn't be put under a light to say that, oh, American people aren't getting paid by this. It's like, yo, no one should be getting paid by this. This is stupid.
These things called super PACs. Nobody knows what the hell they are, what they mean.
It's directly influencing the American public, and it's probably influencing them in a bad way.
Dumbest thing I've ever seen.
It does not represent justice in America. When dark money is fueling elections,
they want to take these people.
It's not fueling, well, maybe it's fueling elections and like candidates and stuff like that, and their ability to do rallies and stuff, and for them to promote ads on websites. But other than that, the money's not directly going to the presidential candidates. It's going to like ads created for the presidential candidates and for the ability of people to like see this person in their face, you know? So it's like, oh, this person's in my face, it's saying something, I might vote for him, right?
People like little puppets, and they want to say, you do as I told you because I gave you $5 million and you better do it.
That does not represent justice in America. We've got to take that money out of politics.
And yet, each party has decided that the only effective way to conduct a campaign in 2024 is to do so with a whole lot of hushbucks. The main player supporting Harris is a super PAC called Future Forward, which is associated with the 501c4 Future Forward USA Action. Founded by former Obama campaign staffers, Future Forward operates in intense secrecy and has spent nearly $500 million to air ads that promote Democratic messaging as of a few days before the election, though that number will probably grow. Meanwhile, a number of different super PACs have been supporting the Trump campaign, also creating ads that target crucial voters in swing states as the election approaches.
Everyone's feeds right now are just being flooded with all sorts of bizarre content. Some of it pretty tame, and then some of it is far-fetched and wild.
Kyle Tharp. Yeah, I know the guy. He writes about online tactics and trends in politics. Because of the anonymity of their financiers, super PACs and other political organizations often feel free to do shadier stuff than the campaigns they support would.
A good example is one prominent PAC on the right is advertising in Arab American areas of Michigan right now, telling those voters that Kamala Harris is super pro-Israel, and then they're going to Jewish voters in Pennsylvania and telling those voters that she is super pro-Palestine. The more people spend on one side, the more the donors are going to freak out on the other side and have to spend more money to combat that. It's kind of a race to the bottom here, and I think most Americans are just really tired of getting flooded with this much and this type of political information in the final days of the election.
Slotcha, Kyle, but if this arms race of muddy money shows no signs of
fucking time, it's like, oh, in the final days of the election, it's like, yo, these ads are out of hand.
Slowing down on either side of...
I've seen some crazy ads. I've seen, like, the political discourse, like the commentary that's on apps right now is fucking outrageous, dude. It's insane.
The aisle.
It's insane, and it has been.
I'm wondering, is there any way to reverse all this? Maybe one day we could, I don't know, overturn Citizens United and go back to a world where our politicians were bribed in much cooler ways, like by the mafia. Well, unfortunately, my friends, that decision lies with Congress. And I wouldn't hold your breath waiting on Congress to decide anything, because then you would die. But you should also remember that many of the lawmakers who could fix these problems are themselves receiving dark money. So it might not be in their best interest to get rid of it. And if you've got a phone, well, you better hold that sucker, because super PACs aren't just involved in presidential races. No sirree. They're actually even more successful at applying these tactics to local elections, running ads in less famous congressional races where voters might be even more susceptible to misleading information. Now, all of this comes together to paint a pretty disheartening look at our electoral system post-Citizens United. Dark money is no longer a problem for political campaigns. It's the solution. Each side has decided that their best shot at winning comes with embracing this dark new world of anonymous financing, even when most Americans agree that big donors have too much influence on our elections. And you can see it in the way that these organizations blatantly manipulate the voting process. A recent CNN report showed how thousands of Americans with dementia were tricked into donating to PACs from both parties. One group of wealthy Republicans has reportedly financed groups that are looking to challenge the outcome of the election should Trump lose. news. Elon Musk was raffling off $1 million a day to people who supported his super PAC in certain swing states before the DOJ told him it's probably illegal, shutting down his dreams of completing the presidential election's transformation into Mr. Beast's Amazon Prime game show. Though his dreams of buying faster regulatory approvals for future Tesla projects by bankrolling Trump are alive and well.
Certain people are far more influential in trying to get their candidates elected than maybe millions of other citizens. I think we can do better for the American people, and I think we should.
Yeah, maybe the American people do deserve better. I mean, if this is going to be our system, let's at least be honest about it. Maybe what we need is a president who's not afraid to wear their billionaire bankrollers right on their sleeves. Someone who will get up there and say, fuck it. I got all my money and my entire political agenda from Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, George Soros, the Koch brothers, the guy who runs Home Depot, and a bunch of random shell companies financed by Russian oligarchs. And to the average voter with a medium level of wealth, I say, gargle my balls. Sounds like an all-American slogan to me. For good work, I'm Dan Toomey.
Worried about politics? Can't relate. Not here at the National Chillers Party for the proliferation of pontoon kickbacks. Special thanks to all of our donors, as well as everyone who helped make this video possible. We appreciate you, and to everyone else, make sure you kick back, relax, and tune out. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.